crimes after they are released. There are also many factors that people face while they are in prison that can cause them to continue committing crimes after they are released. Many prisoners face abuse or neglect by corrupt staff, and many people's mental and physical health decline while they are incarcerated. There's also widespread violence and drugs within many prisons. Drug dealing by staff and inmates can make it hard for those with pre-existing substance abuse disorders, and it also causes many people who had not struggled with drugs before to become addicted while they're in prison. And the use of physical force and solitary confinement to subdue inmates can be harmful to everyone, but especially those with mental disorders. There's an extreme lack of treatment available for those with mental health disorders and substance use disorders. Even though many prisons do treat substance abuse disorders, there's such a large percentage of people in prison that struggle with them, so there's just not enough resources to help like the vast majority of people. So why is high recidivism a problem for us? It directly correlates with high crime. This causes a lot of danger within the community, and many people lose trust in the government and the criminal justice system. It's also very expensive. Processing people through the criminal justice system costs a lot of money already. So when the same person is arrested and sent to prison multiple times, it just becomes even more expensive. But it's been proven that every dollar we spend on efforts to reduce recidivism saves about $4 to $5 that would have been spent on the cost of reincarceration. So why is this important for Christians? Proverbs 31:8-9 says, "Open your mouth for the mute, for the rights of all who are destitute. Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and the needy." So the majority of people in prison face poverty, and they continue to face it after they are released from prison. And it's very hard for these people to stand up for themselves and get help when they need it while they're in prison. As Christians, we are called to help and advocate for those who are struggling. Another verse I found is Romans 12:17, which says, "Repay no one evil for evil, but give thought to do what is honorable in the sight of all." A lot of us may be hesitant to help those in prison because they have done bad things. However, we are not supposed to judge others, and it's not a responsibility to get revenge on people who have wronged us. Instead, God calls us to help and love everyone, even people we may see as enemies. One way for recidivism to be reduced is to improve conditions for inmates. We can do this by reducing the use of violent methods on inmates, especially on those with mental disorders. And I think there should also be inspections of employees often in order to reduce the risk of corruption and neglect. If violence is present in prisons, it's a lot harder for many prisoners to be rehabilitated. And another way is to increase access to treatment for those with substance abuse disorders. Many people in prison were sent there for a drug-related offense, and 65% of people in prison have a substance abuse disorder. However, only 5% are able to receive medicated treatment in prison, and almost none of them receive follow-up treatments. When these people are unable to recover from this in prison, they continue to struggle with addiction after they're released, which often leads to them just being rearrested later. Another way is to expand educational programs and occupational training. So inmates who participate in education programs are 43% less likely of being rearrested than those who don't. And this aside, people who are sent to prison are much less likely to finish or further their education after they're released. And the lack of opportunities that come from this contributes to them reoffending later and just makes it harder for them. So by expanding educational opportunities, inmates will be able to have a lot more opportunities to succeed once they are released. Occupational training also gives inmates a lot more opportunities than they would have had, which decreases the chances of them committing more crimes later. People who work in prison industries are 25% less likely to be rearrested, and they're 14% more likely to be gainfully employed. And being gainfully employed means that you just have a steady job that can support yourself and like all of your family members. It's already hard for prisoners to be gainfully employed after their release, so occupational training helps a lot because it's hard for ex-convicts to find jobs due to bias, legal restrictions, and other challenges. So how can Christians reduce recidivism? A great way that Christians can reduce recidivism is by helping with prison ministries. Prison ministries spread the gospel to those in prison and help them with their physical needs both during their time in prison and after their release. An example I found is called Prison Fellowship. They're a nationwide organization that partners with local churches and churches inside prisons to create programs for prisoners. One of these are called Hope Events, which like include worship music and sermons from guest speakers and musicians. Just last year, 14,000 prisoners attended them, and 2,000 of them became new Christians. They also have Bible study classes and classes for women, including art workshops and therapy. And they also have training courses that let prisoners get a certificate in Christian leadership, which allow them to have leadership roles in churches after they're released and while they're in prison. So this is a very complicated issue, and it runs very deep in our society, so it's very hard to find just one easy solution. And it's also hard for us to get like personally involved. However, some ways I think we can get personally involved are by helping prevent people from committing crimes in the first place and entering that cycle. By helping those facing poverty, substance abuse, mental illness, and homelessness. And we can do this easily by volunteering with churches and charities, with our time or our money. And when we are able to, we should welcome ex-convicts into churches and help them adjust to life outside of prison. Thank you.
All right, good job, Kennedy. So this is one of those topics that like I find it's not even an easy word to say, much less like a lot of people don't even think about it, right? Like what recidivism is, but the moment you start describing it and talking about it, people are just kind of like, oh yeah, okay. It's obvious. I mean, with the statistic that high, what was it, 84%?
82, but it like depends on like the criteria.
Right. So if that's the case, then it's like, man, the number of people that are in prison right now, which by all accounts is 2 million. Like the United States has a real problem with that, right? If that's a problem, like then this is almost like the problem that causes the problem, right? So I really like that. So easy question off the bat, like what made you choose this topic?
So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do my topic on, but I've always been interested in like the prison system and true crime, and I thought this like doesn't really get much attention, so
Right.
I just chose that.
So it seems like a lot of, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, it seems like a lot of the problem falls back on what can be construed as mental issues, mental health problems, right? Whether it's addiction or some kind of other disorder that it causes people to lash out or whatever. I like that you focus on the prison fellowship. That's a really good organization, and they do provide a lot of therapy. Are there any types of programs that are trying to push for mental health in the prison system?
There's a lot of like prison ministries. I didn't look that much about like outside organizations that aren't Christians
Right.
that are helping. I'm sure there's a lot, but like I think also in some cases the government needs to do more as well.
Right.
But like organizations can do a lot, but it's
Yeah.
hard when like the actual prison isn't doing enough.
Right. Well, I mean, it just seems to make a lot of sense that, I mean, you don't want prison too comfortable, you know, like it's
Yeah.
prison, right? But at the same time, there's stuff going on that's just like downright
Yeah.
inhumane, which makes the problem worse, right?
Yeah, it's just hard to like find the balance. I don't really know how to word it, but like, I just think there needs to be like treatment available
Right.
for those who need it.
So then, I thought it was interesting, okay, so yeah, it is a big political government type thing, cause it's a lot of government money going towards, whether it's federal prison systems, state prison systems. We even have private prisons in the United States, which is crazy to think about, that's a different project. But I thought it was interesting that like, whatever you wanna say about, you know, we need to provide more health care or more mental health care for these prisoners. Probably, I would imagine the immediate answer is that costs too much. You have to hire a bunch of people. But I thought it was a really good point that like, that's easy to figure out whether or not, man, if 84% or 82% of these prisoners are just being arrested again, what's the price of hiring mental health workers if it's proven, if it shows that it keeps these people from being rearrested? Can you talk a little bit more about that? Like, did you find any specific numbers or anything like that?
For what specifically? Like
For,
how
like-
much money it saves? Or
Yeah, how much money it would save to put more resources towards mental health programs?
like $4 to $5 per dollar.
Per dollar, so,
Yeah.
like, it would be saving $4 to $5 for every dollar that we would spend
Yeah.
towards, that's,
Which I think that's a lot.
I mean, that just, it seems like a win-win, right? Like, it ends up saving money and it ends up helping the prisoners. I don't know, like, it just seems like one of those things where it's like,
Yeah.
why are we not doing this already, you know? Right. That's all I got. Classmates, y'all got anything for Kennedy, questions or comments? I also think there's something to this, you said a little, sorry, one more thing, I promise. You said a little bit more in your paper about like any kind of, church organizations, like churches, oftentimes will have ministry. So, for instance, the church I go to, the pastor and a bunch of other guys, they go there on a regular basis. One of them's a police officer, which is interesting, I imagine, for him to be in a prison a lot. But they're in Perry Correctional every week, and it's gotten to the point now where it's like it's an official church plant, like it's an actual church inside of the prison. They built a chapel building, they raised money for it, like it's pretty incredible what's going on over there. Well, I guess that goes back to the other question, or your topic was more on what Christians ought to be doing about that. So I like that angle that, yeah, it seems like this is another opportunity for the church to step up, right? Do you know of any other church organizations or anything like that?
I think churches are already doing a really good job. I saw a lot of like, there's a lot of like individual churches that are like just doing things in their local prisons more than there are like big organizations.
Right.
Which I mean, I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But a lot of churches just don't want to get involved. But there's a lot of churches doing really good things.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Anything else?
Did you see, like, in your research, like, is there anything the government is trying to do actively to change it, or are you like, the government's not doing anything?
So they're doing, they're working on like making more treatment available for substance abuse disorders, and they already have like educational programs and occupational training in prison. It's just not enough because the prison system is so overcrowded. So it's like hard because they're already doing a little bit, but it's like prisons aren't made to hold that many people, so there's just not many resources available for like the vast majority of people. But the government is doing a little bit, but it depends on the state, because I was looking specifically at state prisons. So it just depends on like what state you're looking at.
Anything else? All right, thanks, Lee.